All right, folks, we are back and going to be starting up something a little bit different there. Going to be doing the DCS mission editor sort of tutorial there. Actually, I should make an announcement here in Twitch chat for Bestiary as they were interested. Okay. So we go ahead and flip things over to DCS. Should pop up here momentarily-ish. Yeah, that looks good. Unmute Discord. Welcome, Bestiary.
Hello.
Okay, so what we're going to talk about today are a lot of the sort of basic concepts there with the mission editor, some of the things it's capable of doing, some of what the things that it is limited in its ability to perform, and actually build one together if folks are, ready for that kind of thing. First thing I tend to do when I come into do mission editing is I will change the wallpaper up to some kind of, jazzy beat music that I can kind of vibe and build to. One of my go-tos is the F-86 Saber. Kind of a little jazzy beat that you can just kind of have. A lot of the wallpapers will all have a different sort of theme music associated with them. If we were to pull up the AGS-37, it's got this little 80s sort of jam out theme kind of going on with it. Tomcat's got one. F5's got one that sounds like it's straight out of 1986. That kind of thing. We're going to go ahead and stick with the little jazzy beats there for the F-86 Saberjet. I am making a recording of this at the same time I am streaming it. So that way if something truly horrific happens and it gives me a little bit of a lag spike and a drop somewhere, we can recover that quickly and I won't lose anything, and when I post the video to YouTube it will be whole and complete rather than segmented. So without further ado, let's go ahead and click into the mission editor and create a new mission. Before we even get started, we get this screen, which is the new mission settings screen. And on this one you can select which map you want to actually build on based on which ones you have available personally. I think for the purposes of what we're doing today, we're just going to go ahead and use the Caucasus because it's kind of the generic catch-all. If you've got DCS, you have to have the Caucasus. Technically, you have to have the Marianas as well, but it's kind of a boring map, so we're just going to go ahead and roll past it. Saber theme's the best, it really is. But what we've got here in the center is assigning countries to coalitions. And the coalitions kind of determine who is available on what side for your Op4 and Red 4 adventure. Most of these are kind of self-explanatory. If you want to fight people on Red 4 that have certain gear and equipment, you select countries that should have that gear and equipment, and you can assign them from there. But the big ones are these two combined joint task forces that you can see, red and blue. What those do is those basically allow every aircraft, every livery to be assignable in a given spot with a given jet. Because if you were to select something like China, for example, you'll have access to the J-11A, you'll have access to a lot of skins for the PLAF and the PLAN forces, but what you won't have are things with Russia underneath the China assets, because it kind of filters each. You can basically think of each of these countries as a filter for some of the equipment in the game as to whether or not they have been assigned that in the mission editor. And combined joint task forces red and blue is basically the filterless version of that. So it's kind of a good catch-all to use when assigning some things there if you're not interested in using the filter, or if you kind of know what you want to put there and maybe it's something that is close enough to an asset that the nation is looking to use, but is not one that's assigned to their particular faction. You can edit that at any time, but it does come up and ask you first, and usually the defaults are not terrible. Alright, so it's going to be just a minute here while it loads the map for us.
Are you using any of the presets, or are you just using custom?
No, none of the presets. I'm just using custom. You can use some of the presets if you like to make something a little more historical. Alright, so we have our mission editor. Well, I mean, I'm actually playing DCS, so, you know, I'm playing the game that it's associated with. But at any rate, you've got your map space, and it's pretty easy to tell, especially with the Caucasus, as old as this map is, because it goes all the way to 1997-ish. 96, 97, 98, somewhere in there with Flanker 2. We got an ad break that's, I'm just snoozed for 5 minutes, so we'll keep talking here for a minute and then it'll run. But there are some areas of it that are very much underdeveloped and have nothing that you can really play with. And then there's other areas that have all kinds of stuff that have been built into it. A lot of those you can't change within the editor, so you kind of have to work with the playable areas that it gives you. But real quick, we're going to go through what all these buttons here on the left mean and do, and some of these buttons here on the bottom and what they mean and do. Obviously, across the mission top, or menu top, you've got your menu information. The most relevant ones here are Fly Mission, where you can kind of play test it a little bit yourself. You can also use the campaign and campaign builder if you're doing single player type stuff. That stuff typically doesn't work in multiplayer missions because the limitations for the engine, unfortunately. You can use map options to show and hide different things all at once. You can generate and save templates, that kind of thing. Mission options is also one of these buttons that you have here on the side. There's another, yeah, you can change under view either NATO icons or Russian icons, and whether or not you want these in metric or imperial for the units that it shows you in. That's mostly more important for what you yourself are comfortable, oh good lord, comfortable with working with, for assigning altitudes to different aircraft and things of that sort. Because it will display them, the units, in either feet in nautical miles or meters in kilometers. Alright, so down here across the left-hand side, we've got Create New Mission, Open File, Save Mission. But getting into more of the meat and taters, Create Mission Briefing. This, you can give it a sorting name if you like. It will automatically assign the red and blue factions that are available based upon what you selected for your coalitions at the very beginning of the mission. The rest of it is a situation, which when it builds the briefing for you, the situation is the topmost part of the briefing that is shown to everybody, and that's something where you can kind of set up what's going on in the mission story-wise, if you've got anything along those lines. Red task and blue task. If for some reason you've got both red and blue players on the map, actual like client aircraft connected doing your thing, you could type in a red tasking as far as what you want the red folks to do, and you could type in a blue tasking for what the blue folks are supposed to do. And when they assign themselves to one of those roles and they get the briefing, they will get the situation plus their tasking and not the other one. So it's important, if you're doing one that is completely cooperative, that if everybody is on blue, that you only use situation and blue tasking, because if you type all of your nice happy stuff there in red tasking, they're not going to see it. The next tab down is the weather, which controls time of day. You can see the sun and moon position relative to whatever time of year that you pick. This does change. Like we can see here on 21st of June 2016, it's kind of a little waning crescent. But if we were to change that date to like the 14th of June, it's about a half moon. Go to 7th of June, it's a new moon. We got nothing. It's It's going to be a very dark night that night. Go to like the 19th of June, we got like a full moon. And this one I can't snooze, so in about a minute or so, it's going to go ahead and give us an ad. So I'm going to take a brief pause here with all of the weather and wind options and wait for that to end. And I will catch up with you here in just a moment when it comes back.
Hey, Pilum,
Mm-hmm.
check your Discord messages.
Go and refresh that now for me, if you could, please. Let's make sure it's showing the right thing.
Changed real time.
Oh, cool. Excellent. Yep, Chief gives me the Bezos bucks, so all you subscribers, you still get to hear me with what I'm doing right now. I appreciate all my subscribers. I really, truly do. All right, so for those that are going to be watching this on the YouTube channel or something later, or the recording, so I'm not sitting here this whole time. So I think the ads might have finished there, so should be back. Maybe, perhaps. Nope, there's the ad break. Just started. Minute 20 left of the ad. So for those watching along on the YouTube, I'm just going to go ahead and finish talking about the rest of this. And that's going to be that you can control the date and time. Sun and moon. Temperature. Select cloud presets, which have different weather associated with them. And if you mouse over them for just a moment, it will tell you a METAR for what that weather is. And that kind of breaks down as like an overcast 6. OVC is overcast, obviously. 9/15 means at 9 and 15,000 feet, it's overcast. BKN is broken, so between 23 and 25,000 feet, it is broken cloud layers. And then scattered clouds, SCT, at 32,000 feet. Just kind of filters in that way the whole way. Viz is going to be 1 to 5 kilometers with rain, example. Just another few seconds here on the ad break for everybody else on Twitch. Welcome back, folks. So we have presets for cloud cover that we can go through there, and if you mouse over them, it will tell you, what those different things are. Control temperature, millimeters of mercury for the QNH, as far as what the pressure is like within a certain range. Cloud bases, wind speed, fog, turbulence. It's all controlled through the weather panel. The next one down here looks like a little gateway. That's your triggers. That's where a lot of the meat and potatoes of some of the mission work for, like, okay, when an objective happens, then this next thing happens. It's all set up through triggers. Mission goals, really, really important in single player. Don't really need to touch it for multiplayer because it calculates whether or not a mission is considered complete and by what degree differently there, which can be important for your campaign missions if you actually build a set for single player for that. It's a feature that I've not really played with a whole lot because, again, I'm not one that makes missions for single-player folks. I tend to make them for multiplayer folks, and most of those sorts of features do not work in a multiplayer environment. Next one down is Battlefield Commanders. And this is where you can set that pilots can control vehicles. So if they actually have the Combined Arms module, a pilot who's flying an aircraft can order ground units to move around from point A to point B or whatever. Otherwise, you can assign certain numbers of game masters, tactical commanders, JTAC operators, observers, that sort of deal, all the way down, and then assign passwords for them so that if you want the slots to be unique to somebody, you can have somebody, fuss with that. Next down is mission options. These are individual things that basically determine whether or not an individual player can, for example, fly with an immortal aircraft or not. If you don't touch any of the options, it kind of defaults to whatever it is the player's host computer can do. But if you go through here and enforce these, any of these that are checked will enforce the value that's on the right. So you can come in here and enforce that unlimited fuel is off, and no matter what the player's settings are, unlimited fuel will be off, for example. Down here, this little 3-panel thing is the coalition panel again. The green button is a shortcut to the fly mission. And then down here, this next set are all of your different objects that you can place. From fixed-wing aircraft to rotary-wing aircraft to ships, tanks, templates, create and modify templates, or place templates. I've got a few that are already built in there for you, so you can just kind of plop them in there wherever you like. Static objects, some of which are important for things like helicopter FARPs. Initial point objects, the actual bullseye, which will encode for aircraft that have it available as an option, where that bullseye is, and use it as a reference. Creating trigger zones, viewing the trigger zone list, viewing the unit list, removing a ground grouper object, which the delete key on your keyboard works a lot faster than coming over and clicking this button all the time. Map options, for again showing what filters of things that you can see super quick. The draw tool, so you can actually draw things like lines, text, spheres, globes, and mark out on the map like this is an area where bad people are expected to be, and then choose who actually sees that layer. And then the last one's kind of a useful tool here. This little bar with an arrow in between it is a yardstick. You can actually drag it from point A to point B, and it will tell you a course heading from that line and how far that line is from end to end. If you're like, okay, well, how far is it from Batumi to Maycop? That's something I can send the helicopters out to go deal with. You come down here, you click on Batumi, you drag the line up near Maycop, and you look at it and go, wow, that's like 190 nautical miles. I mean, they could fly it in an hour or two. Or 3.5, depending upon their speed. So that's a useful way to kind of actually get a good number for where things are and what's going on. Down here at the bottom, anywhere you move your cursor, as you can see the numbers, you can you can middle mouse, and it's a quick little tap for the yardstick. Down here at the bottom, it displays your longitude, latitude numbers in whatever format you like. You can click on the little words here next to it and change it to MGRS, CCS. I think it's a precision latitude, longitude is PLL. Latitude, longitude, just the traditional sort of degrees, minutes, seconds. And lat, long, decimal. The F-15, for example, uses lat, long, decimal, so I tend to keep that in lat, long, decimal. Change the editing language if you like, English by default. Anywhere you move the cursor down here in the bottom, it will display the magnetic variation, the magvar. Declination of the cursor, altitude. You're like, oh, hey, what's this white spot here? And you put your mouse cursor over it and you go, oh, okay, it's 10,000 feet up. Got it. Edited cursor mode is pan select. You can, if it changes for whatever reason, it will display that down here. And these last 3 buttons here actually change the map that you're working with to either a map like you'd find in an atlas, complete with all of its markings, and complete with certain sea states and objects that don't actually exist in the map. The actual game map, I mean. They should be there in real life, but they aren't. And again, just by virtue of how this is built, you can kind of see where the hard line is for what they've actually drawn and placed into the game and what isn't there. You can also get a satellite image, which is an in-game satellite type image that you can use to kind of look around and see what some of these textures and terrains kind of look like from way up high. And you can use the alt one that gives you all the contour lines and everything else. I do most of my editing in alt. The next one over is show models. If you place down an object and show models is on and you zoom in close enough, you will actually see the physical shape of the object underneath the token. And then last but not least is historical list of units. You can turn it to a pseudo-historical type mode, which will then use the mission year you've used for time and weather and filter what would be available at that time. So if you're looking to create something that is historical for a reason on purpose, you can use that as a fast option to kind of filter all of that out. So what we're going to do next is go ahead and actually start building a Hello World type mission. And for that, we're going to go ahead and go down to Batumi, and we'll start here. So go ahead and drag your cursor down to Batumi here to the south. It's the southernmost airport right on the coast. We're going to go ahead and give it a left click to select it. And up here in the top right, we can change its coalition to blue. The first time you place a friendly aircraft on a neutral runway, whatever faction it has, the runway will also have. So like if I was to come down here and change Batumi first, back to neutral. I come down here and I plop down an aircraft and go, okay, I want a Viggen here. And I want it to be a trained pilot. And I want him to take off from ramp. Bam, Batumi is now blue. Because when you say take off from ramp, it will try and place it on the apron on the nearest friendly runway from wherever it is you place the object. Also, hello.
Hi.
I'm back.
Didn't have a good jumping in point, but I'm back from the world of the strange virtual world.
All right, let's go ahead and continue here with this.
Yeah.
So we're going and we'll drop down a Viggen at Batumi. And you can do that by selecting the fixed wing aircraft or add or modify airplane group. It's the very first icon under objects on your left. And then click here on Batumi just about anywhere and change its type, which will appear on the right, to take off from ramp. Give folks a minute to do that there. And then we'll talk about what's here in this right-hand frame, because this is all kind of important stuff too. Up at the top is the group name. Generally speaking, I don't like leaving things like this left to default because it makes it very hard when you go to start modifying triggers to find what it is you're looking for quickly. So I tend to come in here and I'll do something like, we'll call this Fenrir Viggen. Condition, really don't have to change any of that kind of stuff, but if you want a degraded aircraft for some reason that has damage, you can set it to less than 100%. Country, again, this is where you can kind of filter what skins are available, but it also will filter what aircraft are available too. And if what you have selected is not on that faction anywhere, it could disappear. In the case of all of the player aircraft, which if you click on the type, all of the player aircraft that you personally own as modules or have access to as modules will be highlighted in yellow. But any of the aircraft that could be purchased from DCS are available to all factions, regardless of which one you set. Underneath the country, actually, another little option here. If you see where it says combat here to the right of country, you can click on that and select it to all and actually place civilian nations or neutral nations. So if you wanted to have something like, there's a Greek airliner with a bunch of Greek nationals on it flying from point A to point B through your mission zone, and you didn't assign Greece as a Blue 4 faction because they shouldn't be for your mission for whatever reason, you can do that. You can use the third-party option there, and it will show up as neutrals on the map and allow you another faction that you can kind of play with for whatever's going on. The next one down is Task, which is less important for actual player aircraft that players are expected to use, but for the AI, it's one of those absolute essentials. This is where you actually assign what AI set is going to be given to the aircraft by default. So whatever its mission is supposed to be will be whatever the AI kind of instills it as this is your kind of priority target set. And it will even change what options are available for you. Like, for example, if we go into Escort, just going to give it a waypoint here real quick. Go into the advanced waypoint features of that waypoint. I tell it to perform a task. I can task them with Escort and then assign it a unit and everything else through here. Well, if I come through and I assign him to CAS, Escort is not a valid task that somebody assigned to CAS can do. So it will not let me assign the AI that mission task anymore.
Ah.
Again, it's a lot less important for players because players can basically just do whatever. You know, they're not restricted by that. But when you're making a mission, a lot of the times you're going to have AI aircraft in there for something. You're going to want them to do certain things, and if you give them the wrong task, they will not behave in a way that actually works for you. So for this is going to be a Viggen that we're going to fly, so it really doesn't matter what task we're going to give them, but we're going to go ahead and give them the ground attack task. We only want one unit in the flight, so we're going to leave that as 1 of 1. Type is the AGS-37 Viggen. Skill we're going to set to client. And the reason we don't set that one to player is player is something that is really only important for single player missions because that determines what a whole new mess of trigger commands can function because they only target the player aircraft.
That's actually very funny because that's the difference between player and playable in Arma 3 when
Yes.
you set a unit.
Yep, it's the same sort of deal. The mission editor will let you do a whole lot more stuff to a player aircraft, up to and including things like manipulating Jester. You can set commands in the mission editor to instruct Jester to do specific things. Any of the AI gunners can do this, but only to the player aircraft and only in a single player mission. It does not function in multiplayer. Pilot, same sort of thing as the group name. You can give it a name, especially if there are certain triggers that you're putting into place that is affecting a specific entity, or if you're using a Lua file. A lot of the Lua files will look for the pilot name before starting to do stuff, like CTLD that we were using a bunch back in the day. Use the pilot name. These I don't change quite so much, unless I'm doing something like that where I need a specific object to be targetable or findable so I can hit it with a trigger. Otherwise, I will just leave those alone. Tail number, complete fluff and flavor. It's whatever you want to put in the back of the aircraft. What I do for a lot of the missions that I build is if I'm building for a known group that uses a known set of port numbers, I will put those numbers there for the aircraft ahead of time, just so they're there. It's a nicer feature, so you don't have to type it in yourself. The next option down is the radio. Are they going to have the radio on? What frequency is it going to be on? For the AI, that's important for things like the AWACS or your tankers or things like that, because that's the frequency you can reach them on. And if you've got it set wrong and you're like, well, I want to try and communicate with him on 266 and he's in here as 305, you're never going to reach him on 266 on your own radio in the aircraft. Call sign, really kind of up to you if you want to use any of the ones that are there. I tend to use those just, kind of willy-nilly. Whatever it assigns to the aircraft itself is fine. These next checkboxes down here are important for different things. Hidden on map, which will mask the aircraft from the map regardless of other settings. So if you've got it set to show only allied aircraft on the map, for example, but this one is hidden on the map, this aircraft will not show up on the map even if it's an allied aircraft and meets the other conditions. So it's a way you can kind of hide an aircraft that has suddenly spawned, for example, or might be a vulnerable mission target that you want somebody to utilize TACAN or some other mode of navigation and detection to find, rather than just hitting the F10 map and going, he's right there. Hidden on planner. That option when you start up a mission and it gives you the briefing, at the very bottom of the briefing, it will tell you a list of every friendly unit that's there and every hostile unit that is somewhere on the map. So I tend to use hidden on planner as well, especially when I'm putting enemy units down. Yeah, hidden on map will also hide it from spectators because spectators can usually see everything. They're in the spectator seat. But hidden on planner will take them off the list. So if somebody is paying close attention to the briefing and actually reads the damn thing, which I don't know, you might be able to leave that option unchecked and nobody will ever know what you have there. But if somebody was to scroll all the way down to the bottom and actually read it, they could look at it for a minute and go, hey, wait a minute, there's an SA-10 site somewhere out in this map somewhere. Holy shit. Well, if it's hidden on planner, it won't show up on the list. Hidden on MFD is one that I utilize for SAM sites in particular, especially on the more modern aircraft. The thought process on that is that a SAM site that is static, really, like it can't move anywhere very fast, it can't be packed up very quickly. I'll leave that option off because in theory we've got some kind of satellite or some gung-ho pilot with a TARPS pod who shows up and looks at it and goes, hey, there's a SAM site right here. And now we have the information and we can program the jets to go, hey, there's a SAM site down here, and it will actually show the threat ring on those more modern aircraft situational awareness panels. And so there's a site here. But for some of the sites that are very mobile, that can be packed up and relocated fairly quickly, I will usually hide those on the MFD, so that way when the pilot shows up in the area, they don't already have that pre-programmed ring saying, hey, dummy, there's a threat circle right here. Don't fly in the spot. You know, they got to wait till they get the actual RWR ping first. Yeah, exactly.
Sneaky.
Mm-hmm. Late activation is very important, especially for AI aircraft, if you want to use a trigger to activate them, because you will place them in a default position. They will be in an off state. Your trigger will turn them into an on state, and that's where they will appear. So you can actually give them all their waypoints and everything else ahead of time, and then they are not rendered into the world until they are activated. And then the last one here, password. If you're looking to password protect a mission slot, you can do that now in the mission editor just by checking the box and typing in whatever the password's supposed to be. So if you've got a very particular spot where it's like, oh, hey, I'm doing a mission here, but I really only want people who I know are good aggressor pilots to be able to use the red 4 slots on this server, you can password protect them and just give the password out to the people who need it. So all that top quadrant there, very important. But what we're going to work with here is a lot of the bottom quadrant stuff, because you're going to spend a lot of time clicking back and forth between literally all of these pages. The first page here with this kind of steam-looking symbol is waypoints. And as long as you are on add, anywhere you click is a new waypoint for the aircraft. For the AI, it's going to tell them where they want to fly, where they're going to go. For the player aircraft, it will put those waypoints into the computer for the aircraft up to whatever number it is that they can carry, which can be good and bad. For something like the Tomcat, the first 3 are the ones that shows up, and that's it. Everything else becomes a reference on the knee board that you're going to have to program later. The Viggen gets about 8 waypoints from it. You know, so some of that is going to be a little bit of trial and error and feedback with your people to try and figure out how many waypoints are actually in there that are useful. So what we're going to do here for our Hello World map is we kind of want this Viggen to have a waypoint to go and cruise on out. Just somewhere out here on Batumi. Right about where that FG is if you zoom out just a little bit. Those are the different grid squares, by the way, and as you zoom in, it will populate the inner grid squares. So you can kind of get a reference for where stuff is and use that in your briefings. And then we will go ahead and put a waypoint on this island here, river. We're going to use that as a like a fixed waypoint out here southwest of Zegdidi, however it's pronounced.
I believe it's suck titty, sir.
Yeah, it might be. Who knows?
No, You're looking at GG 1807 or further.
Oh, for the island?
Yeah.
North end of Gulf 19. GG19. So look at the GG grid. Zoom in on a little bit. There's a little river and an inlet, and there's an island on it. The other thing that I like to do for some of the air-to-ground way people is go over here to the altitude section for the waypoint and just bottom it out. Put it at 0. It's important for some aircraft like the F-16 or the Hornet, especially for attack waypoints, because the waypoint system will account for altitude as well in most of those newer aircraft. So if you're trying to use it to target it with the targeting pod, and you leave the altitude at 6,000 or 7,000 feet, the pod is going to look at 6,000 or 7,000 feet and not the ground.
Yep.
Yep. The Apache is another one that I try and do that for. We're going to drop that waypoint down to 0 because that's going to be our little fixed waypoint. And we're going to put another waypoint a little ways southeast of Sakumi. And then another one on Sakumi. And the one on Sakumi will change to a landing waypoint, which will also turn Sakumi into a blue base because only friendly aircraft can land at friendly bases. And it'll take care of the rest. The next tab in, it's got this little orange stripe next to it. I like that they color-coded these. It's such a quality of life feature. I can't even begin to describe you what it was like before.
That's always the good stuff.
The next one in is your payload, which will show you your jet. You can left-click on that jet and swing it around, look at it from all sides. You know, am I content with this particular paint job? But you'll see that it's got a mission payload up at the top, and that is what the jet is going to be armed with once it spawns. And then down here at the bottom, it's got all kinds of different loadouts that are pre-generated. You can use one of the pre-generated ones, you can create your own pre-generated ones, or you can just right-click on each of the different stations and rearm it just like you would if you were inside the jet in the game. Kind of a ferry flight here for this one that we're putting together, so it's not all that important. But I'm going to put some missiles on the wingtips. No. Do a couple of Robot 15s, and since I'm not using AI, we're not going to use the ones that are limited to the AI. And then on this inner pylon, let's keep it simple, and we'll put a pair of AIM-9 Limas on them. And then a fuel tank in the center. You can put your loadout, whatever it is you like. It's all for your own flavor. You can pick your own skin. Again, whatever it is you like. Some of the bare metal ones are kind of nice. This one myself for some reason. You can see the tail number here on the back, and if you change it back here, it'll update it up here. Not every aircraft.
Just a fun aside, I have quite literally had to hand paint that camouflage pattern on a number of aircraft in my time.
I believe it. But yeah, that is the payload section. So that's the armament. What you can do from here is if you've got, for example, you want 4 other jets to be part of the flight, or 3 other jets to be part of the flight, and you want them all to have the same loadout, do the loadout for the first aircraft, and then when you come up here to the unit, where it says 1 of 1, this right-hand side, you can just click out and expand it, and they've all got the same loadout automatically. It's a copy and paste of whatever the first aircraft is. But for now, Let's go ahead and leave that as just the one aircraft. The next tab in is triggered actions, which is a little more important for the AI than it is for the player. But this is where you can do some really fancy things with the mission editor. And do things like have multiple places where tankers are going to orbit, controlled by mission triggers. And while you would do that is the first step is to come over here to the triggered actions page and add a triggered action, such as it's not perform task, it is perform command, switch waypoint. I want you to change to waypoint 3. And waypoint 3 is another orbit waypoint, which will tell the aircraft that it wants to orbit for as long as it's got gas between waypoint 3 and waypoint 4. So you can do things like that to go, okay, this mission trigger has happened. The tanker that's been orbiting at 1 and 2 is now going to push to waypoint 3. And then they're going to orbit between 3 and 4 until the next triggered action happens. You can also have things in there like attack a map object based on a trigger, bombing runs, strafing runs, follow somebody, perform some aerobatics if you want to have some AI aerobatics going on. Carpet bombing, join a big formation. You can set those options in there, and what it does is it will give you a list that you can then push an AI tasking to through the mission trigger system later. But that is where you need to set them up in advance for them to even show up on the list, is under the triggered actions tab. The next one is a summary, which will, kind of give you an average, like if you start at this time, the route time takes approximately this long, the route length is approximately this long, average speed for the route that you've programmed is at 270 knots. So if you've got varying speeds, varying altitudes, a lot of wiggly lines, and you're like, damn, how far is that to actually fly? You can use the mission summary to have that information displayed at your fingertips for it. The next tab over is navigation target points. Assign some of those. I am actually going to go ahead and assign one right here, kind of near waypoint 2. In the Tomcat, you would need navigation target fixed points to create the additional waypoints that can be encoded into the computer, such as the fixed point. It's IP. I'm trying to remember what IP point actually stands for. Just drew a massive blank on that one. Initial point. Surface target. Defense area, defense point, hostile area, home base, things like that. Because you can encode up to 10 waypoints in the Tomcat's computer, but only 3 of them are actually navigational waypoint steer points. The rest of them are all special. And in order to set those special waypoints up, you have to use the navigation target points here. That's how Heapler set their stuff up.
I love it.
The next tab in after that is waypoint properties. You can add different properties to it, but it's a lot less essential for that. Click back on there again. I tend to leave that one blank. I've never really found a need to mess with that one, but there are options there that you can place on it, and most of them are probably effective for single player. The other important one is the radio settings, which is the next tab over. Not every aircraft has every tab, so you gotta kind of work with whatever icons you have on whatever aircraft you're currently looking at. But on the radio one, you can actually set all of the presets for the push buttons, so you don't have to have people manually changing every channel. If you go, okay, cool, I've got 15 radio channels on average for all of these aircraft, well, channels 1 through 15 are, there's your numbers. You want a tanker over here, it's on channel 2. You want the home base over there, it's on channel 5. You can set all this up in advance. Some of it is essential too, because some aircraft, like the MiG-21, the Mi-24 Hind, yeah, you're not wrong, Chief. That's probably one specifically for the BX waypoints for some of the cruise missile weapons if you want to encode them in advance and instead of having the pilot hard key them.
Sorry, I'm getting pulled away, but it
No
was
worries.
nice hanging.
Yeah, it was. Thanks for coming by.
Of course. Good work. Teach.
Thank you. But you can encode all of those different channels in advance. Snooze the ads here for another few minutes. And then the last tab is the aircraft additional properties. Not every aircraft has additional properties, but if any of the aircraft do, they're going to be listed here. In the case of the Viggen, you can pre-program and hard code the RB04 group target selection. Like if it finds multiple targets in a group, which one's it going to target? The jump angle, target selection, left, right, or both, the weapon safety height, and cartridge restrictions. What this will let you do is if you're like, look, I know you can get in there and encode your own waypoints, but this time no, you're flying the mission that the mission is giving you. You can set it to disallow cartridge switching, and then only what the mission editor put in on the website, or in the mission rather, is available. Allow all is obvious, everything's okay there. Allow non-generated. If they go in and if you hand them like an actual MIS file or whatever from your AJS37 folder that creates whenever you fly the Viggen, you can give them a non-generated one that's ready to go. So we got our waypoints, we got our Viggen, it's flying around, and that's great and all. But we really want something to come up and say, hello world, right? So what we're going to do first is place something to have out here in the world. We're going to place a boat out here in the water. And I kind of want that boat to be about 70 kilometers away. We're going to drag that boat over there, make it about 35 miles. Close enough. And that boat is going to be Combined Joint Forces Red, just for the gits and shiggles. And we're going to make it this Elna 160 tanker. And if we zoom in real close, because we got the models on, you can actually see that the tanker is there. It's a naval asset, so we can kind of give it facing there. I kind of want to put a broadside relative to the waypoint here. Ship, waypoint, great. We want to make this one late activation, and we're going to give it a name. I'm going to call this one AAA Target. I'm not doing that because I want it to be an aircraft artillery, any aircraft artillery target. I just want it to appear at the top of the list because it sorts it alphabetically by default. But we're going to use late activation because I want to use a trigger to cause this vehicle to appear. I don't want it to go anywhere. I don't need it to go anywhere because the only place we're going to make it do is pretend like it's a submarine once. So now that I've got this, we need a trigger. Well, I'm going to go ahead and select our Create Trigger Zone button over here to the left. I'm going to click someplace on the map, right about there or so. And it plops down a new trigger zone. Real cool. Well, I want to rename this trigger zone, and we're going to call this one Spawn Ship. And you can change this to either a quad point trigger zone, or a circular trigger zone. If you use circular, you can set its radius, which again, it's going to display it in feet here, or it might be kilometers if you choose to use the metric system instead, whichever way you like. You can make them literally as big or as small as you want. But in this case, I kind of want to make sure that we hit it, just in case we're flying a little bit off course. So I'm going to make that one probably about 10 miles wide. So 5280 with an extra 0. It's now a 10-mile wide trigger. The colors that you assign to the trigger is entirely on you as the mission editor, as a visual reference for separating what's doing what. It has no other aspect in the game whatsoever. It's purely a organizational tool for you personally. So if you're like, okay, cool, I want all of my triggers that are associated with the Viggen to be dark green. Well, you just make sure any trigger you're using the Viggen stuff with is this dark green color. And then at a glance, you can look at the map and go, okay, cool, there's all the Viggen triggers. All right, we have another ad break that's about to start here in about 50 seconds. But what I'm going to be doing next is setting this trigger up to spawn the ship. And I'm going to give that about a minute or so once the ad break actually begins to go ahead and do that, so that way all of you guys can come back and really kind of see this in action. Meantime, though, it does mean you get to rock out to just a little bit more of that jazzy, jaunty beat. Although I gotta say, if you don't want the ad breaks, you can always provide your Amazon Prime dollars, and that will make you a subscriber. It's free for you. Alright, so for my subscribers that are still here watching along, the other things that you kind of do with the trigger is change it to a quad point, which will make it a square shape. You can edit that quad point and kind of turn it into whatever pretzeled posted shape you would like. So if you were looking to try and make something that is a little more conformal to the border, you can kind of use the quad point to draw that shape instead. Almost lost the stream there for a minute. That's okay, we were recording it too, so if there is an actual hitch, go ahead and post that to YouTube as a full, complete thing. Ad break should be over in about a minute for folks. $40 seconds or so. Okay, so the ad break has ended. Go ahead and welcome back there, folks. Good to see everybody again. We have placed our little spawn zone. We've got our trigger that's down there. You can change the trigger to quad point and make it any kind of square shape you like, or you can leave it circular. We're going to go ahead and leave it circular for this exercise, at least for now, but it's important to know that you can actually do that, and that way you can get better shapes for specific zones. Because obviously if you're looking for like a trigger, for example, to go, oh hey, you violated this national boundary, you're not going to be able to fit a circle in there without really overlapping the other areas, and that's less helpful. You can link triggers to units, which will then create a moving trigger. So if you're looking to have something like, I've got an aircraft that I want to be escorted, and the aircraft that's being escorted needs to have an aircraft in the zone within so many miles. Well, you can create a trigger that is that many miles wide, you can attach it to the unit, and then you just put in a trigger condition that search for, is there a player aircraft in the zone where they're supposed to be there? You can also hide it you want to, but these don't show up for players in the game. They will never see them, so if you hide them, it's really only for your own benefit if you're trying to look around at other stuff and not be bogged down by the number of triggers you've got if it's a complex mission. So now we've got to wire this damn thing up in order to make it work. So we're going to go ahead and click on this gateway underneath our cloud. And this pulls up the trigger page, and we've got 3 different panels here. And the way that you can kind of look at this as is on the left is what is the trigger, which is something for you. In the middle is what are the conditions that make this trigger triggered. And then on the right is what does it do if the middle area is true. So we're going to go ahead and create a couple of triggers here. The first one you may not be able to do at home because I've actually got a script for it, and that is I want to enable the splash damage script that we use. So I'm going to create a trigger that is called mission start. So as soon as the mission starts, it will run the trigger. I usually color my mission start triggers in black because I really don't need to see what they are. They're only being set the one time. And I'm going to give it the name of splash damage. It doesn't need a condition because it's a mission start. This is going to happen as soon as the mission starts. The action it is going to take is called do script file, and it's going to run the splash damage script. So the next one, this is the one that you can do at home if you're following along with me, is a new trigger. And since we said we're going to use dark green for all of our Viggen stuff, we're going to put a dark green color on it. Again, these colors here matters for nothing at all than your own personal organization. If you are a crazy person who can sort everything in that plain white text from top to bottom and you just know how all that crap works, more power to you. I have no idea what the underside of your desk is with all the wires on it, but it's probably a tangled mess. If you're the person that has to have everything neatly quartered off and everything's got a color and that color means something and you're only using that color for the one thing, you probably use a lot of zip ties underneath your desk and everything looks nice, neat, and orderly, and it's good job, thumbs up. You might also work in IT, I don't know. Some of those conditions might be true. Maybe all of those conditions are true. Maybe none of those conditions are true. But it was funny, so thanks for the ride. We only want this to happen once, so we're going to leave it as a type 1 for once. The other options that you have at your disposal is repetitive action, which is every heartbeat it will try and do whatever the script is. Really not a lot of call for using repetitive action. Once is just like it advertises on the tin. Once those conditions are met exactly one time, it will execute whatever that line of code is and then never look for it again. Switched condition is one that can be turned on and off. I use switch condition a lot of the times for building internal menus for games if I'm looking to spawn certain things. And then, once the mission has been called for, roll the menu back to a different state because I'm using switches to toggle which one of those is actually active versus which one isn't. And then mission start, which is as soon as the mission is initialized and load, do these things. So any of the initialization scripts or certain Lua files, if you're using actual Lua scripting to accomplish something in your mission, you would want those to be a mission start most of the time, in most cases. There's some cases where you wouldn't, but for our purposes, we're just going to use the ones. Trigger name, spawn boat, kind of simple. You can set an event condition, but no event is usually the one that I use because I want to have full control over the trigger. I don't want something weird to happen where it may not make that true, or might make it true when it shouldn't be. Okay, Bestiary, thanks. Take care. There will be the VOD and everything up if you want to catch the end of this after you've logged out. So you'll be able to keep watching at that point or check in on it later. All right, so the conditions here for it, we're going to set a new condition, and that condition is going to be, as we scroll through here, part of Coalition and Zone. Coalition that we're going to look for is blue. So if any blue anything is in that zone, it will then execute the script. The zone, there's only one zone on the whole map, so spawn ship is the one that auto-populated. You would obviously put in whatever other zone you like if you're using a different zone for that. And then the unit type. You can select airplanes, which is all the fixed-wing aircraft, helicopters, which is, of course, all the rotary-wing aircraft, naval, any boat, and ground, any ground anything. Infantry counts as ground vehicles for the purposes on this one. So we're going to go ahead and leave this one an airplane, and basically you can kind of read this as if any blue airplane is in the zone spawn ship, perform the actions. What action are we going to perform? Well, we're going to hit new. We're going to scroll down a little bit to group activate. Group is AAA target. I want it at the top of the list. This looks all nice and neat now, but we've literally only got 2 things on this whole mission file right now. The other things that you can do for something like conditions, and this is something that threw me off for a very long time, so this is one of those landmines that is something to avoid yourself until it dawns on you that this is the way it works. If you come through here and go, well, I want more conditions. I want it so that if a helicopter comes through here, it blows up, or I want it if, an infantry unit comes through here, it sends a text message and taunts them for some reason. If you put anything else in here, back to back, you can assume that the word "and" is included in between each condition. So in order for this center block to be true, everything must have occurred. In which case, you're looking at, for this, just using the previous example we just talked about, you would need this airplane to be in the zone, you would need a boat to be in the zone, you would need an infantry person to be in the zone, and then if all of those conditions were true, then it would go ahead and perform the actions. The way that you can get around that is using an OR statement. So you'd click on this object here in conditions, you'd hit OR, and then you can put something else in there, and then it becomes if this condition is true or this condition is true, perform the action. You can really kind of make some little bit of complex doors and gateways there where it's like, okay, well, I want all 3 flights of aircraft to be in this zone. All right, well, then we want part of coalition or part of group in zone rather than coalition. Choose the specific group. And part of group and part of group. And it's like, well, I kind of want it to spawn if the rotors are in there too, so it can be an either or. Then you'd put the or bracket in there. And then you do part of group and zone, rotor group A, part of group and zone, rotor group B, part of group and zone, rotor group C. So then it becomes if A, which is all 3 of those conditions, is true, or if B, all 3 of those conditions are true, then perform the action. So anything that's not separated by or is considered to be separated by and. Anything that's separated between or, if you've got multiple conditions in play, is kind of in parentheses like in math. So it's going to execute all of those things first, then check to see if the other condition is true. A little complicated, but it will make more sense as you're doing it, as you encounter those things. But basically, the way this works right now, if our Viggen gets into that zone, it will spawn the group. Well, it would sure be nice if it told us so. So we're going to go ahead and add a new action. So we're going to click new. We're going to scroll down most of the way to message to coalition. It's the one that we want. There it is. Message is going to be to blue. Text is boat spawned. Says hello world. Gotta have a hello world joke in there somewhere, right? So you can display which coalition you want it to go to. In this case, we want it to go to blue because there's just going to be AI on red, so there's no point in sending it there. It will display this text, whatever text you put in the box. Sometimes I like to do things in my missions like put a little bracket, like a little run of equal signs or whatever, just to kind of make it visually distinctive in the little frame that it's in. The next line down is how many seconds you want that message to be displayed. Obviously, if you're putting a lot of text in there, you may want it to be on a longer set of time. If, for example, you're voice acting this one, and you've got the text up, and you want to have the text up front of its display as well as the voice playing, you'll want to make sure that you look at your voice file for how long it is. Set the time frame to a little bit longer than that file. That way they get, the whole conversation, and then the box disappears shortly thereafter. Clear view, if you don't want the little window that it pops up in to be completely opaque, it will just make it transparent, so it's just white text against the sky. And then a start delay is from the point where this condition is met, how many seconds afterwards do you want this message to be displayed? So if you put in a 10-second delay, the Viggen crosses the threshold 10 seconds after it crosses the threshold, then it would display the message, but the group's already activated. So you can kind of offset things a little bit that way. I'm going to go ahead and put one more trigger in. So we're going to have a new trigger. It's also once. I'm going to leave it green because we're coding things for the Viggen. I'm going to call this one Boat Killed. New condition. The condition is going to be Group Dead. A lot of the times that I tend to build missions where I've got a large number of units in a central location, I'll actually use Group Alive Less Than. And it will ask you what group you're looking at and by what percentage. And the reason why I do that is a lot of the missions that we will put together are ground targets. Sometimes the group contains the SAM sites that are in there, the mission objective targets that are in there, a mess of infantry that are in there. And unless you want somebody showing up and hunting down every last little infantryman in a zone, which can be very hard to see at 10 or 15,000 feet looking through a targeting pod or with your Mark I eyeball. If I use Group Alive less than 75%, 50, when the group is less than that level of health, it will then trigger the action or command, which is usually, hey, the mission's complete, you did the thing. In this case, though, I've only got one unit, and I really only care if it's dead, so we're going to use Group Dead. You can also use, if you know the specific unit, Unit Dead, and then it's going to sort by the actual name. That's where using the names is important, because if we can see Aerial 1-1 is there, that's our Viggen. And Naval 1-1 is there, that's our boat. And since we're only building a mission for these two things, those are the only two that are there. If it's one of these missions where I've got 500 or 600 units available, that makes that list a lot harder to sort if it's left as Aerial 1-1, Aerial 2-1, Aerial 3-1, whatever. So if you're going to use Unit Dead, make sure you name the unit something that is easy to find. Like, go back to Group Dead here. AAA target. So it puts it up at the top of the list for you. Or Triple Z target, where it puts it all the way down at the bottom. Anything where that makes it easy for you to find it. So we're going to use Group Dead. So when this boat is killed, it will give us another message. Message to Coalition. Message to Coalition Blue. Text. The boat is dead. 10 seconds. And since I've got the sound effect that I'm going to use, it's going to be Sound to Coalition, which, just for your own reference, the game can use OGG files most easily, but I believe it uses WAV as well. As long as your audio format that you're using isn't saved in one of those two formats, you can tell DCS to use the file. So I'm going to have it play to blue, and the file I'm going to have it play is yay. You can even give it a little start delay, just like you would for the message delay. So once this condition is met, so many seconds passed. It's always in seconds, by the way, whenever these things are talked about. Play the sound. So in this case, as soon as that boat's dead, I want it to play the sound, and then give us the message. The last thing I'm going to do is come over here. We're going to make like a multi-condition sort of trigger because I wanted to check for a couple of little things. And it's one of those little bits that we can kind of see what the editor does. We're going to create another trigger right here on Sakumi. We're going to make it a quad point trigger instead. Color it green because it's going to be attached to the Viggen stuff. Viggen landed is the name of my trigger there on that. And I'm actually going to edit it down so it just kind of covers the runway here at Sakumi. So I've edited the quad points. They're right here, kind of right over the actual runway boundary itself. I'm going to click the edit button again to get out of editing mode for the trigger. Now we got this nice little green tinted trigger right here on the waypoint. It's called Viggen landed. Give you a minute there to finish pasting that one down. Is this too fast, Amanda, or am I going at a decent pace?
I lost you at waypoints.
Okay, that's all right. Come back here and we'll go back to that real quick.
I mean, I've caught up, but it's almost impossible to do without being able to see what you're doing.
Ah, okay. It's fair. It's fair. Man, you know what this is? It's an argument for a second monitor for you.
Uh-huh.
Then I can have it up. You know what? Let me I'll go ahead and move this out of the way for a minute. That way you can at least look over your shoulder, kind of see where I'm at. So I've got, the Viggen. Waypoints are placed. You're all caught up at the moment. You got the little trigger there.
Yeah, my waypoints are different, but other than that, I got everything else.
Okay, good stuff. And you've wired them up proper. Trigger command.
I think so.
Okay. Let me take a quick look at yours real quick. Just lean over and peek. Go ahead and pull up your actual triggers condition. The trigger gateway. Group activate naval 1. Okay, yeah, that should do it. Okay. Yeah, all right, we're good so far. Go ahead and click back into the frame. And the only thing I would recommend is move the trigger zone someplace where your aircraft is going to fly. Like,
I have them right here. I can just change all those, though, because I was trying to find the island. I'm looking right here.
oh, okay. Well, no, I'm not looking at Batumi. I'm looking at one north of that for my waypoint.
Yeah, well, you said GG. That's my GG.
That's GG10.
I was also zoomed in.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it.
So, like,
I'm
this
actually-
is GG18. I'm like, GG19's all over land. So I'm like, oh, that's an island close to it.
It is GG19. And it's the little river that's like halfway between Batumi and Sakumi. It's much further north. Like, zoom out with your mouse wheel a little bit, and then go north. Is kind of right there in the center. That little island.
Okay.
That's all right. You can place your waypoints wherever it is you want. The only thing that I would recommend is, you see how I've got my trigger here,
Mm-hmm.
a ways away from the ship, because I basically want to fly through the trigger, spawn the ship, so I can shoot the ship.
I gotcha.
You don't have to delete the trigger, you just need to move it.
Why is it not grabbing it?
I don't see your trigger there anymore. No, it's down there. That's your
Where's
trigger.
it down there?
So grab your trigger and move your trigger someplace away from the boat. Right about there is fine. And then put the boat a little further out, kind of straight line from it. We're just going to make this easy. There you go. So what you'll do is you'll fly towards that circle. So go ahead and make sure you're in edit, and then you can drag that waypoint up. Edit's on your right, otherwise it's just going to add waypoints.
I deleted all of them.
Oh, okay. Why is your trigger over there again?
I don't know. Oop.
There you go. You can click on either the waypoint. Yep, there you go. And then you can add additional waypoints kind of up by the river on that island. There you go.
Every time I put down a waypoint, it moves it.
You know what? On your right where it says waypoint, click all the way out to the last waypoint. On your right, all the way on your right in the actual panel. Waypoint 1 of 3. Check all the way to the right, like the little right arrow button where it says waypoint 1 arrow. No,
No. Oh.
yeah, waypoint page, first one. Waypoint arrow to your right.
That one?
Yep. Type it over. All the way to the end. Delete that one. Just hit del. Okay, now drag your new waypoint 1. Go to, yeah, you're in edit mode. So go ahead and drag the new waypoint 1 that you have all the way on the island and put it like kind of by the boat. Oh, that is weird that it attached it to the waypoint. That's fine though. Go and put it there and then add a waypoint. Put it on the island. And another waypoint and put
Yeah,
it
there now. Left it alone.
perfect and put that on Sakumi. There we go. And then make that a landing waypoint underneath the type. There you go. All right, so now manager's all caught up with us. And maybe you guys at home are caught up with us as well too. Good stuff. All right, so we're going to go ahead and add a trigger condition for the Viggen landed waypoint. So we're going to go back into our triggers. Just a little gateway underneath the cloud. We're going to make a new trigger condition. We're going to call the trigger condition Viggen landed. It's kind of match the trigger name that I put on there. In this one, we're going to go with units AGL altitude lower than. It's a condition. The unit's going to be aerial 1-1. And the altitude will say less than 5. Now what this one is in particular, just so we're keeping clear, is the units above ground level, AGL, altitude, lower than 5 feet. Because I want to make sure that the Viggen has made complete contact with the ground. We're going to add a new condition as an AND condition. So I'm not going to use the OR button there. I'm just going to go ahead and put this one smack underneath the other one. And it's going to be unit speed lower than 5 knots. Now you'll note that down here in the bottom it says 5 knots. But up here in the actual trigger condition, it's saying 2.56944444444444. That's because as far as DCS's coding goes, it is automatically converting knots to kilometers per hour. So as long as your speed down here is correct, it will convert it properly for you. You won't have to worry about the math, and it will take care of it for you. So basically what we're looking at, just to read this kind of in plain English, is when the Viggen has crossed the Viggen landing trigger zone and its altitude is less than 5 feet and its speed is less than 5 knots, do the action. The action is going to be to give a message. It's going to be message to Coalition. Message to Coalition Blue. And the text is safe landing. Which is going to be hilarious if we still manage to get down there and mostly wreck the aircraft, but otherwise meet the trigger condition. And again, since I've got a funny sound that I want to put in here for it, we can go ahead and have it play a sound as well. You don't have to worry about that one at home, as you probably definitely don't have that sound. But it's going to be yay again. I'll give it a 5-second start delay. Now, the last thing that we kind of want to do, just because it's unnatural to do it otherwise, is we're going to click on the date, time, and weather. And I want this mission to take place at 9 o'clock in the morning. It's a nice, bright, clear day in 19th of June, 2016. Click on the sun and moon icon, you can see the sun's actually up. It's like 30 degrees above the horizon. Not bad at all. We've got clouds that aren't going to be a problem, but mostly what I'm looking at here is the navigational wind settings. We're going to talk about those for a minute. Because I kind of want it to be wind that's straight on for Batumi, makes it easy for us to take off. Well, we can see here that 130 is roughly the heading for the other end of the runway. If we use our fancy yardstick tool, it's actually more like 126. So we're going to use 130 anyway. No, not 130 knots. I want it blowing to 130. So blows to direction at 33 feet. I want it blowing to the direction of 130. You can just type that right in, right there on the box. And we'll call it about 3 knots. Now, the important things here for your mission building is these altitudes here on the left, which if you're using metric units is going to display in meters, if you're using imperial units it's going to display in feet. These are not from ground level. This is from sea level. So like someplace like Nevada, a lot of Nevada, especially as you push further north, a lot of those altitudes are around 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 feet. They don't even look at these two bands. They look at this next one, which is at 6,600 feet up to 26,000 feet. So whatever the wind condition here is at the 6,600 feet mark is what the prevailing winds are going to be on that part of Nevada. Out here in the Caucasus, right here next to... oh, we got an ad break again. Waiting for the ad break again. But for those of you playing the YouTube game at home, we're just going to go ahead and continue here a little bit. Here in the Caucasus region, right here next to the Black Sea, a lot of these altitudes are actually near zero or near 33 feet. So the winds actually kind of feel like those bands. But there are places, like up at the Caucasus mountain range, where it's up to 10,000 feet or more. So these upper bands are what happen. The lower two numbers, the ones that go to up to 33 feet or up to 1,600 feet, those are linked together. If you change one, it will change the other. Usually the ones at 1,600 feet are about twice as fast as the ones at 33 feet. It will not, however, affect the speed or direction of the upper bands, which you can put at any other speed and, more importantly, at any other direction. So if you want to have some like shearing winds that are blowing through, because if you look at the Earth, it kind of looks like almost like an egg shape for the wind, where the winds at the ground speed or ground level are going to be blowing at one direction and one speed, and as the temperature in the air heats up and then air climbs back up into cold air and the cold air descends, there's going to be places where the wind might change direction entirely and be much faster. So you can actually set those two upper bands to some other thing. For the purposes of our mission, though, we're just going to make those identical to the 1,600 foot mark, put them at about 6 knots, and at about 130. The wild thing that you can see in DCS is if you've got multiple cloud layers that are at these different altitudes, those cloud layers will be moving in different directions, which can be interesting. The last options we're not going to mess with, but I will talk about briefly. Turbulence is turbulent air at ground level. And whatever number you put in the box is multiplied by 1/10 of a foot. And that is the actual variance of turbulence that will hit your aircraft. So if you put it up to 50, you multiply 50 by 0.1, so you just move the decimal point over. There is 5 feet of variance at ground level. There's somewhere in that margin, which is a huge buffet for some poor helicopter jockey, sorry Nixon, or somebody coming into land, sorry Mander, that it will suddenly just raise or drop the aircraft a whole 5 feet without giving you any warning to it because the air currents under the aircraft are just that unstable. I'm going to leave that at 0. It's not going to be important for what we're doing. Fog and dust smoke are old DCS model stuff. Very much not important for whatever it is we're doing now, especially if you use some of the other presets. In fact, some of those can conflict with one another and make the presets not work as well. So I tend to leave those off and just not touch them for any of the missions that I'm doing, even if it's someplace like Iran or Persian Gulf or Syria, where a dust storm or dust smoke is something that should be present there somewhere, because we've absolutely been promised that one day we'll get dynamic weather, and I'll believe that when the supercarrier has a briefing room. So the other thing you can change is the temperature. We're not going to, but the temperature change is something that can greatly affect available power for the rotary wing aircraft. So if you're making missions for helicopters and it is high and hot, it's going to be very difficult for them to get up with a heavy combat load. Going to have to go super light. If it's also too cold, some aircraft won't start. Some will actually need, power carts to get started. And aircraft will definitely need things like their pitot heaters and engine heaters and things like that taken care of, because that is the ground level temperature, and it only gets colder the higher up you go. So things to keep in mind. However, we've done all this stuff. The next most important thing is to make sure we save this mission and give it some kind of a name. I'm going to call this one Hello World.ms. It's going to take a little minute there as it actually does it. And now we're going to go ahead and playtest this bad boy, which should be a good time in and of itself. Just going to make sure the joystick is all ready to go here, so you're going to hear a couple little chirps while it gets reconnected. I'm going to go ahead and draw the screen back between Mander's computer and mine so I don't accidentally look to my right and cause him to look sharply to his bottom left. We're going to go up at the top. Flight, fly mission. Mission contains unseen changes. Yeah, we're just going to go and save it. And we're going to hit start. I'm going to go ahead and load the mission here for us. Yeah, about 122 nautical miles to go, so it's a little bit of a hike. It's not an awful hike. So we got our aircraft here. It's an AGS-37. It's number 25. It's part of CGTF Blue, Ground Attack. Fenrir Viggen is the group name, and its start location. If you've got a bunch of aircraft that are client slots, which is what you want to use if you're building human slots for multiplayer, generally what I'll end up doing is I will make one of them and call it test case or AA test case or something along those lines, so it puts it up at the top of the list. So it's easy for me to find it and use it as my test bed and then delete it later when I'm looking for it. So let's go ahead and into the mission. Taking a minute while it loads. Reset my head tracking there. First thing I want to do is make sure and verify in the rearm panel that I am Oh, you know what? I didn't include in the trigger zone that my aircraft was actually in the zone. Alright, so let's go ahead and fix that. We're going to go ahead and quit out of this. Not quit to desktop, just quit, because that'll bring you back to the mission editor page. First we get the debriefing page. See, look, I get to help you find bugs in your stuff too.
Yeah, because it started me off in the air.
Okay, well that's an easy fix for you. Make sure you click on your initial aircraft at the starter point, and under type, change the waypoint to takeoff from ramp. The options here, turning point starts the aircraft in the air at a turning point. Flyover point is something other than the initial point. It's basically, I want to fly to this waypoint, it's going to go to the next waypoint. Takeoff from runway will put you on the runway with a hot started aircraft that is already ready to go, as if you auto started the jet. So there are some things that may not be turned on. Takeoff from ramp will start you in a cold and dark state on the ramp somewhere, and it will even let you select which parking spot you want to use if you get assigned to one that you really didn't want. For example, if you were to zoom in on Batumi here, you can see 1 through 5 is kind of up here in that top corner. My aircraft is currently in slot 4, but there's also 7 through 10 that's in these other slots, a little bit closer to the runway. If you wanted to use one of those, you could. Just have to tell it which one to use.
What loadout were we going with for this?
I put on 4 Sidewinders because I'm not going to be fighting anything. I'm just kind of carrying them for the fun of it.
Oh, okay.
And 2 Robot 15F programmable anti-ship missiles. Make sure you're using the ones that don't say for AI, because we're not flying an AI aircraft. RB-15F programmable anti-ship missile. It's down underneath the Robot 4E anti-ship missile and is 2 down or so from the AI versions of those weapons. Don't be like me and carry the AI versions. Fun note while we're here, this payload restriction checkbox, you can utilize it to turn on or off. Yeah, no shit, Chief. We know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. I took up AI Robot 15s and then couldn't fire them. But you can get in here and you can actually select what weapons are capable of being carried, and in some cases where they can be carried on the jet. So if you're looking to do something historical, but you don't want to actually use the historical mission slot, which might eliminate a bunch of aircraft and things, and you're like, it's kind of sort of in the zone though, and I kind of sort of still want to use it. You can use the payload restriction to just get rid of advanced weapons, for example. I use that all the time for some of the missions where I'm trying to set it up for a specific era. Just because it then means that I don't have to rely on somebody sitting there going, yeah, no, I totally only put Sparrows on my jet, and then an AMRAAM B comes off the rail. The important note about payload restriction, though, is that it only applies to the group of aircraft, and in some cases the individual aircraft if you decide to get that nitty-gritty with it, but you can, kind of copy and paste it to all of the others as we showed earlier. If you use payload restriction, it applies only to that individual group, so you'll have to do that for every individual aircraft group. But anyway, I just carried 4 Sidewinders, 2 on the inner rail, 2 on the outer rail, the fuel tank in the center, and then the Robot 15Fs on pylons 2 and 6.
Nothing on 5 and 3.
5 and 3 have AIM-9L Sidewinders, Robot 74s. Again, there's no aircraft to shoot down, so they could be empty. It doesn't matter. We're just going up to go kill this boat and go land somewhere. But anyway, let's fix that trigger that broke. Because the other condition we forgot to include in there is the fact that the aircraft is even in the trigger zone. So we're going to select Unit in Zone, Aerial 1-1, and Viggen landed.
Wait, what was I doing for that one?
We're going to go to the trigger. We're going to go to the Viggen landed trigger that we put in.
Uh-huh.
And then add a unit inside zone condition to the other 2 conditions we already put in. Go to unit inside zone, select Aerial 1-1 for your Viggen, and then the zone is Viggen landed instead of spawn ship. So now what it'll actually do is, 1, check if the aircraft is even in the zone. If it's in the zone and it is less than 5 feet in height and less than 5 knots in speed, give me the clap and give me the safe landing text. And then we'll go ahead and fly that again and save it. Select my jet. Click the fly button. It's not immediately clapping at me with some kids saying that I did something great that I hadn't actually done yet. Let's go ahead and start her up.
Is the data cartridge already assumed to be in?
No, you'll have to actually put the data cartridge in. You just won't use any others than the one from the mission. So it'll use the actual waypoints.
Oh no, it's showing my data cartridge already in.
Did you take off from parking area hot, or?
I'm set up hot, I guess. I'm on the runway. It put me on the runway already, and
Oh, did you use takeoff from runway as the?
Oh, I must have.
Okay. So yeah, yours is hot and the cartridge is already in it.
Yeah, mine's all set.
All right. Just waiting on jet to get itself in a happy place. Make sure my seat's armed. That an attack. It's thinking very hard about it. Okay, it's ready for me. 909. Enter. Now our cartridge is loaded. Switch on over to nav. The radar in A1 mode, so I get the nice sweepy sweeps. HUD and radar altimeter mode. And with that, she is kind of ready to taxi. Doesn't take much to get her rolling. So we're going to come on out here and make our taxi. Nobody else here, so we're just kind of doing this for the mission testing to make sure all of our stuff works. Not as obsessed.
Doesn't look like it spawned my ship.
Did you cross through the actual zone?
Yeah, I'm on to B2 now, so yeah.
Well, you can check on the F10 menu and see if it came up.
Nope.
Okay, well, we'll take a minute and look at your triggers here in just a second. It's probably just a matter of making sure to put the right group activate code in there. Look at as far as actually shooting at the ship once we see it. And then we'll hop back and take a look at yours. Keep myself at about 200 meters here. Gonna zipping out to our first waypoint. Put it in altitude hold mode here. And through the magic of single player, I will go ahead and activate some time compression.
I think I figured out what was wrong with it.
Okay. What'd you have?
I didn't have unit inside. It was looking for the entire coalition to be inside the zone.
Now, can you part a coalition in zone airplane or unit in zone in the case of, having just one aircraft in there?
Which is what it did.
You know what? I actually want to go ahead and convert B1 to an attack waypoint. Okay, a boat spawned. Hello world. You can see the boat is out there. And go ahead and hit T1 and take our cursor and sweep it on up. And put it all over the little dark speck there. And TV. So now we have moved M1 to that place. Just turn to line ourselves up here a little bit. Unsafe the trigger. (250 meters altitude). Our target boat is present. There's one. There's two. Now we go to B2. Safe our trigger. You back in the jet already?
It didn't spawn again.
Okay, well, we'll take a look at it together. Again, through the magic of time compression. Cruise missiles are still cruising. I've sacrificed my external fuel tank to the fishes as a coral reef.
Because the action should be group activate, right?
Mm-hmm. Is it a once trigger?
Yeah.
Okay, and it should be, your conditions are...
Unit inside zone.
right, and then it's the right unit.
Yep.
Inside the spawn Viggen zone. But you know, your trigger zone is also a little weird because it was attached to a waypoint. Why don't you go ahead and delete that zone and plop down a new zone kind of out in the middle of nowhere, so it's definitely not attached to anything, and then drag the circle over where you want it to be. Because that trigger did something weird, and sometimes the best result in the mission editor, in case there is an error or something like that, is to just delete the object and try again. Delete the offending trigger.
Am I linking a unit to it?
No.
That might have been the problem.
Yes, because then you're always in the trigger zone. Or the trigger zone is moving with you. Alright, these robot 15s have peeled off and they're coming back in. Hey, the boat is dead. Excellent. Now we're getting closer to our navigational fix. Come off the afterburner a little bit. Take her out of the autopilot. Get ourselves a little bit of altitude. Kind of want to be able to see where our zone is. And kind of clearly pinpoint our fancy island. Blend mode and use marker brightness. I have a Lin mode bound, so let's take a look. Oh, Lin log, okay. Lin mode. So linear instead of logarithmic radar gain switch. Got it. MKR brightness, radar gain. Oh yeah, look at that. That's the money. That's the money right there. Okay. I want to bind that to a rotator there somewhere. Go ahead and dial that range down a little bit further. So we can really see that island. And just so that I'm not the moron. That makes sense, Chief. That actually is really helpful. Radar was one that I was going to actually take some more time to try and figure out. Button 20. Button 20 is at press. So we want to go ahead and TV and T0. That looks much better. All right. It will be big black blocks. Yeah, that makes sense. That's good. That's actually something I was going to try and find next and kind of really help Mander learn how to master. So that works out really nice. Thank you. Yeah, look at that ground scan. That's good. All right, it's going to pull this over a little bit. line back up on our course. Should be a direct base. Got another ad that's about to start somewhat soon. You're not going to miss too much on this one once it starts, though, folks, because I'm just going to be cruising time compression power. Yeah, no, it just worked out that way this time. Like I was looking to just kind of use the cursor to make all that reality happen, and I just happened to be that close to it that I did it right over the top of the point. Because I know you can do a visual fix in it as well. All right, we are getting closer, and as we can see, our heading reference has gone ahead and lined itself up to try and get us to fly right towards our base. Go ahead and start lowering ourselves down. Preemptively arm the thrust reverser. Got all of our lights and everything on. That heading line is coming right off the waypoint like it's supposed to. This radar is actually really sharp in this mode too. Look like in B-scope. I'm much too fast here, so let's go ahead and just do a couple of nice sharp S's. Yeah, I know. Okay, so below a certain altitude, that radar is not nearly as helpful. It's not the highest bar to overcome there, Chief, between the F-18 and the F-16. Oh yeah, that's right, elevation control. We'll need to also bind probably to that little thumb axis there. That'll be a place for it. All right, 3 green. At our landing speed. Under it now, so I'm going to pick up the throttle a little bit while maintaining AOA. Did changing your trigger zone work?
Yeah. I'm just realizing that I'm gonna need some more practice with those because I don't even know how to drop those freaking bombs. I've never used them before.
Okay. Well, are you in a spot where you can see the boat?
Yes. Well, I'm out now because I came in on there and flipped all my toggles and switches until I was on top of the boat.
Oh, well, that's all right. You can extend back around for it. I will go ahead and lean my head over and help you out. As soon as I test this last trigger by engaging my thrust reverser and coming to a full and complete stop. Yay! All right, cool. All the triggers worked. Let's go back to the mission editor.
Because what's the attack mode for this one? Or did it already start me in it?
You can use nav. Your
No,
weapon.
no. Is it SJ?
No, you're going to use attack. So we're going to rotate your weapon selector wheel all the way over to attack.
Okay.
And sweeping the radar, you can find the tiny little black speck out there that is the boat. Kind of out in the water.
Well, I gotta take off first.
Fair. All right, hang on a second here, folks. There we go. Just want to take my track IR eyepiece off, or headpiece off real quick so I can slide the screen over and watch Mander for a moment. Go ahead and change your radar over to the sweep mode, which should be A1, the first tab in.
I think I have those bound.
There you go. There you go. That's the sweep we want. That's good. You can use right Control Z and right Shift Z to change time compression. I think right Shift is to put it back to normal speed if you wanted to speed it up. Or you can just floor it with full afterburner. It's not terribly far.
No, I'm not very far out here. This gives me plenty of time.
Go ahead and look down and left in your cockpit, all the way down on the wall panel. And you see that little tiny rotator dial between the radio gauge? It's just out of frame to your left, low, super low, behind the radar stick.
This one?
The dial behind that. Pick your head up a little bit. It's your own sensor that's missing the. There you go.
I can't.
Well, go ahead and take the flat screen for your track IR, and there you go. That works too. You can do it that way. That little dial, not that one, a little forward. There you go. That is your radar brightness control knob. You can dim that a little bit by bringing it up a little bit, so it's not quite as bright. Now you're super low to the ground, so you'd either have to tilt your antenna or pick up your altitude.
It's picking up the boat.
But do you
I'm
see?
heading straight at it.
You see the little black speck that's the boat?
Yeah. Well, I did.
And pick the nose up a little bit so you get a nice clearer line, some more altitude. You want to be somewhere between like 200 and 400 meters up anyway. If you drop them too low, they're going to go right into the water, and that's helpful for nobody. That should be fine. It's a good altitude. What boat did you put out there? Was it a tanker, or was it just the first boat you could find?
I think it was just the first boat I found.
Okay. So it's at B1. Go ahead and convert B1 to a target waypoint. So we're going to look at their dial, rotate it to tact. set it to input, 9, B1. And then back to attack pause and output. There you go. So now that is M1. So you'll hit T1 like you would try and take control of the Maverick Seeker head. And use your little knob up in front to drag the cursor out on the radar screen. Hit T1 to take control of it, and there you go. And now it's you got control, so go ahead and slide the it's your index finger in front on your throttle. You should see a little black cursor start to sweep out. Yeah, there it is. It's kind of moving slow. You're going to want to put that black cursor on top of the target.
Like that? It looks like it only sweeps back and forth. I can't.
You need to pull it up.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
Yeah, pull it out and put it over the top of the target. And then hit TV, like you would lock the Maverick Seeker head. So now the circle should be over there. Put your nose on the circle. That's better, that's better. Unsafe your trigger. And give it a click. Hit F6 real quick. Anything?
Nope.
Both weapons come off. You should hear a nice firm clunk. Your wings are rocking like they probably came off.
Well, it's not doing anything. I can hear the click, but it's not. Yeah, they didn't come off.
No, your gear's still down, man.
Oh,
Once the gear comes up, try it again. Unsafe, and then click and press. And
there
that's
we
one.
go.
That's 2. Now go ahead and roll and get out of there. Watch your throttle so you don't compressor stall. All right, and while he's doing that, we'll go ahead and we'll come back to you guys here. You have to hear all of that one kind of transpire, which is fun.
Yeah, they went far. That's pretty good. I released them too late, but at least now I know how to do it.
Yes. Step 1, have your gear up.
Yeah.
But that's going to go ahead and conclude our mission thing here for tonight. It's supposed to be just a super simple hello world kind of thing. There's a lot more features that are in the mission editor that can be utilized to make a bigger mission. And I think starting next week, we're going to go ahead and show you what a lot of those mean and what a lot of those do. The real secret weapon here is the trigger system and all of these different options. You remember earlier we talked about having the AI push to a different task? You can set or push the AI task here, but this AI action will only appear if you actually have AI actions in this little menu. If they're not there, it won't actually do it. That's one of the powerful ones for making that happen. But you can also do things like have it run a script file, have a start or stop a smoke effect, blow up a unit. If you want a unit to just explode because that's what the story for the mission happens to be, so on and so forth. Flags on and off, setting flag values. Flags are triggers or are variables that can be used to initiate a trigger. So if you have a flag that turns on, the fact that that flag is on could start another trigger that tells it to execute a bunch of other commands. Group AI on and off can turn on the artificial intelligence for a group and just completely override whatever the group is supposed to be doing. Group deactivate can get rid of an entire group of units, which is a fast way for cleaning something up when something was destroyed, or if you've despawned a mission, because that's the kind of mission that you're building. Group resume, it will do whatever its task was before. Group stop, it will stop doing whatever it is it's supposed to do. drop an illuminating bomb into the zone if you're doing a night mission without night vision optics, that kind of thing. Messages to all coalition, specific countries, groups, units, etc. Picture. You can actually have it put a picture in the game. So like if you created a JPEG image, for example, of a Polaroid of a Tu-95 Bear being intercepted, and it's like, quote, the view from the backseat of a Tomcat, you know, you could do picture to coalition or picture to unit or picture to all, whatever group of people you want to send that to, and have it display that picture as a little token piece of like, yeah, look, we just took a Polaroid, bam, image. Radio items. You can create your own menus using the radio item add for group, coalition, or whatever. Remove, you could take those away so that they're no longer present, such as if I've already spawned in a mission, now I don't want that menu to appear anymore. Radio transmissions, you can have it give a little crackle effect and things like that, and it'll put a radio transmission over the radio for you. Place or remove marks, blow up scenery. There is so many things that this thing can do that it is sometimes frustrating for the things that it can't do. Which are things we're going to talk about next week as we delve in deeper into the DCS mission editor. And congratulations, if you've been following along and you built the mission and the triggers and everything with me while we were doing it, you have in fact created your very own Hello World mission with whatever aircraft you wanted to put in there, whatever little waypoints you wanted to fly. And it does function. You go out, it spawns the boat. The boat wasn't there before, it's suddenly there now. You can sink the boat, it'll play the text, tell you the boat was sunk. Fly back to your fixed point, fly back to your waypoint to go home, and then bada bing, down on the deck, safe landing, yay, mission complete. Congratulations, folks. Thanks for coming along for the ride today. I hope you'll be with us again next week as we delve deeper into the mission editor and actually start looking at some of the trigger commands in greater detail, and actually build a much more complex mission, or at least put some of the framework down for it as I start going through that process with you. Always ask for consent, try to communicate as best you can with your partners, and try to be genuinely decent human beings, and I will catch up with you again later on in the week. Have a good night, folks. Thanks for watching.